Welcome to the news at Trash Panda Revelry. Here's some of the news this week. Holdout Republicans have agreed to confirm Todd Blanche for Attorney General, after he decided to at least ostensibly end the Trump IRS Settlement Fund, the $1.8 billion fund created to pay out to Trump's allies, to include members of the angry mob that stormed the Capitol building on January 6th. The amazing thing about that day is, if it had been a more lefty group doing that, Republicans would have lost their minds over it, and probably be talking about execution for treason. And if it had been people of color, there's a strong chance they would have been gunned down. But because it was mostly a bunch of white, right-wing yahoos who stormed the Capitol, then they all get pardons, and possibly even a reward for doing it. Equality and civility at its finest. In other news this week, Trump is reportedly furious and considering firing Jeanine Pirro, U.S. District Attorney for D.C., after the vandalism case against former Olympic canoeist David Hearn was dropped. Pirro's office, after receiving more information from the Department of the Interior, had admitted in a court filing that the reflecting pool issues have mostly been due to a botched repair job and not actually vandalism. Trump, who is used to lying freely and frequently outside of courtrooms without legal consequence, was furious at his attorney for the admission, repeating, "It's vandalism, vandalism, I tell you. It has absolutely nothing to do with our guys trying to repair the pool by just quick spraying it with some blue truck bed liner." Due to the vastly unsuccessful Iran war, CNN reported that a senior military officer at U.S. Central Command recently sent out a mid-war brainstorming message, looking for new and unconventional ways to pressure and punish Iran. Suggestions received so far mostly revolve around hacking and jamming Iran's media broadcast signals, and replacing it with looped streaming content to include a death metal music playlist, a video of a hyperactive, pantsless Trump ranting at aides for 108 minutes while they look everywhere for his Diet Coke branded swim trunks, audio recordings of J.D. Vance praying for the mother of his children so that she might be converted and not go to hell, and all 20 seasons of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. The Phoenix Species Project has been in the news lately, a $200 million project designed to bring species back from near extinction. This would include certain lemurs, iguanas, and Christians who actually listen and follow the example of Jesus. Football player and conspiracy theorist Aaron Rodgers announced on the Pat McAfee show that Dr. Anthony Fauci was an absolute coward and a criminal for repeatedly pleading the Fifth during the recent Rand Paul-run Senate hearing. Paul later bypassed the full Senate and took a committee vote along party lines to refer Fauci to the DOJ for contempt. Fauci has appeared before Congress over 250 times and answered Rand Paul's same questions under oath several times before, but his lawyers, especially after seeing Jack Smith's recent treatment and following Rand Paul's continuous attacks in the press against Fauci, had determined that this hearing was a political witch hunt designed mostly to entrap Fauci by even the slightest misspoken word or mistake in order to be able to hang perjury charges on him. Rand Paul and other Republicans had even more or less stated this as their primary goal before the hearings. And in today's climate, Fauci's lawyers saw no advantage, only risk to their client for him to answer questions yet again. And so, whether sound advice or not, they advised him to take the Fifth. Rodgers, absolute intellectual titan that he is, either failed to grasp all that, or just didn't care. Which is funny, because he should know all about people trying to trap you into mistakes. After all, reports are that conspiracy theorist Rodgers may also be looking for a way to specifically blame Fauci for his fourth quarter fumble and pick six interception in last year's 30-6 playoff loss. The New York Times reported this week on how the Crocs shoe company has an office in Malta with just 2 employees that it uses to funnel profits through to avoid the company paying more in U.S. corporate taxes. When asked about this, Republicans in Congress said, look, As you can see, it's clearly the poor that are the real problem with taxes. New York Times also reported this week that top military promotions for women are down 50% this past year under Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. This comes after an inordinate amount of blocking promotions or outright firing of high-ranking people of color or women in the military by Hegseth. It's like Hegseth has taken it upon himself to protect the critically endangered North American white male Pentagon employee. And if you're anything other than that, then you're likely not qualified. Which is ironic coming from someone who was actually historically underqualified for the position that he now holds. But hey, he's a white male, so I'm sure that makes it fine. Hegseth is a strange character, believing American military strength is so obviously the arm of the Lord, while quoting Old Testament-sounding biblical verses that only exist in movies. He clearly skipped reading the actual gospel and the words of Jesus, and instead breezed through church Sundays to go drink and shoot stuff after. And so now we have an underqualified defense secretary who thinks he's a holy crusader, loyal to his emperor pope. Interesting times. And finally, in somewhat related news, Nike is still locked in a court battle with Trump's EEOC over whether the company's DEI policies are reverse discrimination against white people. The company had pledged back in 2021 to gradually work to achieve a 35% representation of minorities in its U.S. corporate workforce, which is slightly less than the 43% minority population of the United States. Nike remains one of the few companies that have not caved to the Trump administration's demands on DEI. In fact, in a sign of defiance, on all motions filed during the case, Nike, whose motto is "just do it," briefly changes that motto to "just bite me." And they still explicitly refuse to change the Nike Air shoe line to the Nike Aryan shoe line that many right-wing politicians have been hoping for. Good for you, Nike. And that's all the news for the week. See you next time.